Hello, this is John Jaw1, and we are looking at Luke 22, 35 through 53. Uh, this is day 115 in reading the One Year Bible and my continued reflections on the New Testament writings. And Luke pictures here a critical turning point in the life of the disciples and the life of Jesus. And it starts off, Jesus had intentionally had his last meal with his disciples, cherished this time of love and intimacy with them, made the Lord's, what we now call the Lord's table, the Lord's Supper, a tradition that has been now we inherited from the Jews and has been brought into the church. And it's a rich tradition to explore in its depth and meaning. And really placed himself in the role of the lamb on the altar, symbolically. Said, "This is my body broken for you. This is my blood shed for you." Then he starts getting downright practical. He asks them a question. Hey, when I sent you out to preach the good news, and you did not have money or a traveler's bag, extra clothing, did you need anything? And they're like, no, we learned in those settings to trust your provision. And that's a big deal. If we have established a baseline of trust, then practical planning doesn't get in the way. But we need experiences that teach us somehow that God is able to provide. And so the disciples have had this practical experience. God's able to provide. And Jesus even goes as far as, okay, be prepared to defend yourself. Even get a couple swords. Now, honestly, this is not so that they can assert themselves in violence, but they're not going to be easily just sort of walked on or walked over. People are going to know, hey, here's a group of guys, we got to respect them. They're even armed. They can protect themselves. That was the reality of that intense pressure cooker of early Rome. If you weren't able to defend yourself, if you looked weak, people might take advantage of you. Now, again, they had learned that they didn't need those things, but now was a season where, to be practical, you had to prepare for that. So, now Jesus is looking at what's ahead of him, and he's preparing through prayer. And I am really, really struck by the fact at the intensity of Jesus's prayer. And the contrast, it's like I find myself right with the disciples. At a certain level, when the intensity of life reaches a certain level, I begin to emotionally and mentally shut down. Grief exhausts me. I fall asleep. And his admonition to me, as well as to all of us, is get up and pray so that you will not give in to temptation. I've never thought of, I mean, it's been a long time since I've thought about the role that prayer has in actually protecting us from temptation. I want to be protected from temptation. And there are times when the soul is more vulnerable than other times. Grief is one of those times. Times of celebration can be also when we are carried through intense emotions in one direction or another, we can be more vulnerable to temptations, and there are times to cry out to God with tears, and there's times to thank God and give God the glory in celebration. And I think I want to learn more about that, remember more about that. Now Judas comes and wants to he betrays Jesus with a kiss. And Jesus again addresses this audience. He heals, um, one of the folks takes a sword, uses it, cuts somebody up. Jesus takes that opportunity to show that he is a healer of life and not a destroyer of life. And in the midst of the betrayal itself, he asks people to size up. Come, hello, who am I? Who are you trying to deal with? Am I some dangerous revolutionary? Do you need clubs and swords to arrest me? I was teaching the temple. Why do you come here at this time? He's trying to shake them up and trying to get them to think about who they've aligned themselves. He's working even in this moment to reach out lovingly and redemptively to this group of folks that have come to arrest him. It's pretty amazing. I think there's a deeper question that we all have to ask. Why Judas? Why was Judas one of the 12 disciples? Why was Judas an answer to Jesus' prayers to God and became one of the followers? And then why did Judas go down the road he went, in contrast to why did Peter go down the road he went? And I think that the vulnerabilities of the soul, like Peter and like Judas, Judas represents really a caving in, a retreat back to the assumptions, the basic assumptions of one's cultural milieu, cultural frame of reference. And Peter represents a collapse of one's ideals. Actually, I think if both of them had repented and come to God, Jesus would have been able to restore them. But Judas took the consequences of his own actions into his own hands. He didn't look to see that there was even a forgiving, gracious God to turn back to. He couldn't take that first step of vulnerability once he realized what he did. So, I'd leave this question to you all. Who is Jesus? Is he just a dangerous revolutionary? I would say that if you know who Jesus is, it will change your whole life completely. And it will be personally more revolutionary than anything else in your life. God bless. Keep the faith.